Begin today the Gemara on Daf Nun Amud Beis, towards the bottom of the Amud, 2 lines from the bottom, where it says Gufa. So the Gemara before over here brought what Rabbi said, that Kol she'einoi b'zeh chazeh afile b'vasach haseinoi. That when you have something that according to Torah it cannot work to one after the other. And the example that was brought for this is to marry a woman and then a sister, a chaisa. So it's a kares, and you can't, Kidushin won't take effect. So b'vasachas, if you try to be mekadesh 2 sisters at once, none of them will be mekadeshes. And that's the explanation for what it says in the Mishnah, mekadesh isha ubita, or isha and achaisa, together they're not mekadeshes. So here the Gemara will bring the statement of Rabbi and discuss it, bring from other sources where we find seemingly that it does work. Gufa Omar Rabbi, so Rabbi said this rule, Kol she'einoi b'zeh chazeh, anything that you cannot have it take effect one after the other, afilu b'vasach haseinoi. So even if you try to do it together, that it should take effect at once, it will not take effect. Eis ve'Abaye, Abaye asked on this. Harmar b'maiser, a person that is separating his maisres, and he gave extra maisres. Now maisres is a set amount. You give 1/10 from the produce. But if a person gave double, he gave 1/5. So what happens? Peireisav misukonim. So the produce is meiser. He took off meiser. Now, but since he took off extra, umaisres mekulkolin. But the actual meisres that he separated, so that with that it's mekulkol. There's a problem with this. What's the problem? So as Rashi explains, you have meiser and tevel that are mixed with one another. Since you only have to give 1/10 meiser, and this person gave double, he gave 1/5 meiser, so only half of it is really meiser. The other half is tevel. So now in this meisers you have here, it's a mixture of meiser and tevel. So you really have to give again meiser on half of it, which is still tevel. So therefore this is a problem. You're going to have to be misaken again this to separate it, that it shouldn't be mixed with tevel. That's what it says here in this brayse. So on this the Gemara asks, Ve'amai, but why does the Maisa take effect in this way? Neime, we should say over here the rule that Rabbi said, Kol she'einoi b'zeh chazeh. Anything that doesn't work if you do it one after the other. Afilu b'vasach haseinoi, if you do it together, shouldn't take effect either. So over here with these maisres, if a person would want to give maiser 1/10, and then after he already separated the maiser, he wants to give again another 1/10. The second 1/10 will not be maiser. Maiser is a set amount, 1/10, not more. So if he can't give another 1/10, that should take effect after the first 1/10. So if you're giving a 1/5 altogether, you're giving it a 1/5 meiser, the whole meiser shouldn't take effect at all. So why over here do we say that it's musukonim, there is meiser, but you have tevel mixed in with this? Answers the Gemara, Amalei. So Rabbi answered him, Shani meiser is different. The isei lachatzoin. That it's possible for a person to say that he wants to give maisres, and it's going to be, what he's giving will only be half of it will be maiser. Now the Gemara explains what that means. The Omar tiskadish palge de chitze. If a person comes and says that half of the kernel that he's separating should be maiser, and the other half will not be maiser, so then kadesha, it becomes only half of it becomes maiser. So if a person is separating maisers, and so typically if you're separating maisers, so you designate a certain portion of the wheat, then you say this would be maiser. But what if a person comes and designates a certain portion of the wheat, and he says half of the kernels should be maiser and half of it should not? So that works, you can do such a thing. So over here, what happened is, when this person is separating, and he's saying that a 1/5 is maiser, what he's really saying is the same like a person that says that half of the kernels of the wheat should be maiser. And therefore over here as well, so he separated the 1/5, half of the 1/5 is meiser, and half of it is chulin, or is really still tevel. That's what the person is doing, just like a person that would explicitly go and give meiser for half, and say that he only wants half of the kernel to be, so that's what's happening over here as well. So therefore the meiser takes effect. But the Gemara now asks from another case, v'harei meiser behemeh. But when it comes to the halacha of meiser behemeh, which is also a din of meisers, but this is different than meisers work when it comes to produce. Meiser behemeh is where you have 10 animals and you take them, you put them in a barn, and they all walk out in a single file line, and then the 10th one, you hit it with a red stick, and that becomes the meiser behemeh. So what's the halacha by Maisa Behemah? The lekel achatzain. Over there, it isn't possible to say such a thing that you're separating and only half of it would be Maisa. You can't give Maisa Behemah and say half of this animal will be the Maisa and half of another animal. By the Tfuah, for example, you could say half of this kernel, half of that kernel, but not by Maisa Behemah. And also, Veleke Bezeh Chazeh. There is no Meiser as Bezeh Chazeh because you can't say that the 10th should be Meiser and then again another 10th should again be Meiser, one after the other. Once the 10th is Meiser, the 10th is Meiser. And the 11th is not Meiser. Marove said, or the gears over here in the Gemara is not Rove, but Rabbe said as the following halacha. Yatzu shnayim basiri, if these animals that were coming out on a single file line, that's how they're supposed to come out. But now when the 10th came out, instead of being 1, 2 came out as the 10th. V'karan asiri. And he called both of them, he designated both of them to be Maisa, to be the 10th. So what happens now? Asiri va'achadasa mu'uravin zeh b'zeh. So this is a 10th and an 11th that are mixed with one another. So one of them is Meiser, but we don't know which one is the one that's Meiser. So in such a case, what we're going to have to do is one we're going to treat as Meiser and the other one will be as a Shlomim. And therefore, so Rashi explains what you would have to do is you would have to let this one graze. You don't know if you bring it as a carbon shlomim or not. You wait until it gets a mum, and once it gets a mum, you're able to redeem and then designate another behemoth to be a shlomim in its place, and the other one, which is a meiser, the kohen then is able to eat that. After the kohen is able to eat the other one. Yeah. So, but what do you see over here? The point over here is even though when it comes to meiser, it's not bezeh achazeh. But nevertheless, when 2 came out bevas achas, I say that both of them become Kaddish. So why do they both become Kaddish if you can't make 10th and then again another 10th afterwards? So if they came out together, so then none of them shouldn't take effect Ma'aser Behem on either of them. Answers the Gemara, Shani Ma'aser Behem is different. The Isei Betos, because over here, if a person makes a mistake, and he, as we'll see here in the Mishnah, the Gemara quotes, and he refers to one that as the 10th, even though it's not the 10th, so then it's learned from Sukkim that there'll still be a Kidushin that will take effect. The Tanan, as the Mishnah says, Kara Lichi Yasiri, if a person made a mistake, and he called the 9th the 10th, Ula Asiri Chi, and then the 10th he called the 9th, Ula Achadosa Asiri, and the 11th he called also the 10th, Shloshtan Mikudoshin. They all three become Kaddish, and they don't all have exactly the same halacha, as Rashi brings, that the 9th one, you can eat it when it has a mum. The 10th one is the one that we say is really the one that is Maisa Behemah, and the 11th one will have a halacha like a Shlomim. But over here, we learned this from Sukkim, that if a person made this kind of mistake, so for the 9th and for the 11th, like similar to the 10th, that it will get a certain Kedusha. So since by Maisa Behemah, there's the halacha that it even with a mistake, the Kedusha takes effect, that's why over here, you say that if they came out together, there'll be a Kedusha on both of them. But by Kidushin, for example, where Rabba originally said as halacha of Kol Sheini B'zeh Chazeh Filu B'vasachas Einoi, over there, it's impossible for there to be B'vasachas. If it's not B'zeh Chazeh, there's no such a concept of tos. From another case, the Gemara asks, Harei Toida. When it comes to the carbon taida. So now the carbon taida is a carbon shlomim, which is brought as a taida, together with 40 breads and different kinds of breads that have to be brought with it. So it's 40, that's the number, not more. The lesse betos. Over there's no such a concept of tos, that if you made a mistake, you designated these 40 breads and other 40 breads, that it should all become kaddish. There's no such a thing. And the lesse nami bezeh chazeh. And there's also no such a thing of bezeh chazeh, that if a person shechts the carbon taida for these 40 breads, and then he goes and says that other 40 should become kaddish also after the first 40, it doesn't become kaddish. It's Rashi brings the psukim. It says al zevach karbone al zevach, that it has to be that when you shecht, it's on these 40 that you designated for the shechita. Those are the ones that are kaddish, not any ones afterwards. If I remember correctly, one of the Rishonim here, maybe the Ramban adds that also you don't find regarding the breads the concept that the Gemara said before regarding Meiseres, that there's a concept of Chatzoin, that you could say that when a person is makdish more than the amount, that what he meant is, what he's being makdish is half of the kernels. So that doesn't apply by the breads of a carbon taida either. So we can't give that answer that was mentioned before either. Now, Itmer, we learned about the carbon taida shenishchata al shmeinim chalis. A carbon taida was shechted, and the person shechted it for 80 chalis instead of 40. Chizkiya says, Kitshula arbaim mitoich shmeinim. Only 40 of the 80 become kaddish. That's what the carbon taida is, and the other 40 are nothing. Have no kiddush at all. And Rabbi Yochanan says that even these 40 also did not become kaddish. None of it became kaddish. Again, loy kachila arba mitoich shmeinim. So over here, it seems like that Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan are arguing over here at this point. When you makdish 80, and this is something that you can't do b'zeh achazeh. You can't be makdish 40 breads for this carbon and then another 40. So Rabbi Yochanan says, therefore, if you makdish it together b'vas achas, none of it becomes kaddish. It doesn't take effect at all. It's not the number. You can't. Nothing happens. But Chizkiya says that no, 40 takes effect and the other 40 doesn't. So the Gemara says, no, over there the pshat is different. Didn't we learn the explanation for this? That Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, or another Gersa here is Amar Rabbi Zera, to explain what exactly the machlokes here is between Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan. Hakal Maidim, everybody agrees, Kalechad Amar, if the person that did this said clearly, Kachila Abaim Mitoich Shmeinim. He has 80 chalis here, but he wants that 40 out of the 80 should become Kaddish, not all 80. So then, again, Kalechad Amar Kachila Arbaim Mitoich Shmeinim, Kachi, Lo Yiktishu Arbaim. So then the 40 will not become Kaddish. Elam Kain. Sorry, this is how you read it. Again. Kail Maidim, Kalechad Alma, Kachila Arbaim, Mitoich Shmeinim, Kachi. So then those 40 became hektish, or became for the they're for the carbon, because he said clearly there has to be just these 40 and not the other 80. So what's the problem? So it's just 40 out of these 80. Lo Yiktushu Arbaim, Ela Im Kain, Kachi. Shmeinim. But if the person specified and said, I don't want just the 40 alone to become Kaddish for the carbon. These 40 should only become Kaddish if all 80 are becoming Kaddish. So then loy kachi. So then it does not become Kaddish because you can't be Makdish all 80. It's just 40. When is the argument over here between Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan Ela Bistam? When a person has 80 breads and he's makdish them and he doesn't specify clearly what his kavanah is. Does he want 40 out of these 80 to become hektish? Or does he want dafke, if all 80 can become, then it should become hektish? He didn't specify. So how do we understand what was this person doing when he's taking this number of 80, which is not the number that you need for the carbon? So Chizkiya says the only reason he brought 80 is not because he wants all 80 to become hektish. It's because he's makdish 40. But if these 40 will get lost, so then he has other 40 that he'll be able to use. But really in his heart, he just wants to be makdish 40. So therefore it takes effect. But Rabbi Yochanan says no, that his kavanah is that he wants to be makdish all of them. And if he wants to be makdish all of them, then you can't. Just like b'zeh chazeh, you can't be makdish first 40 and then another 40. So if you try to be makdish all 80 together, you can't be makdish all 80 of them. That's the machlokes. So everybody agrees to the point that Rabbi said. The only question is, what was the kavanah of the person when he didn't specify what he meant to do when he was makdish all 80 together? Okay, this is the conclusion of the Gemara's discussion regarding this rule that Rabbi said, Kol she'eino b'zeh chazeh, is also it doesn't work b'vas achas either. And this was the explanation for the Mishnah, where the Mishnah said that a person is mekadesh 2 sisters, b'vas achas, none of them are mekadeshes. So now the Gemara comes back to explain this Mishnah. But now Rava that gave this explanation, why did he have to explain our Mishnah based on this rule that Rabbi said that you can't be Mekadesh 2 sisters together, just like you can't be Mekadesh one after the other? There's another reason, there's a simpler reason. Typically, you should say that the reason is because it's Kidushin, she'ein misurin lebiyaninu. That this is a kind of Kidushin that the person then can't have a relation with his wife. Because he doesn't, since he's being Mekadesh 2 sisters together, so therefore, you can't have any relation with them. So therefore, even one of them, and the problem over here is because he didn't specify if he's Mekadesh one of two sisters, he can't be Mekadesh both of them. It's a erve, so but he's only being Mekadesh one of them. But he didn't say which one. So because he didn't say which one, so we don't know which one of these are his wife, so he can't have a relation with any of them. That's the reason why the Kidushin doesn't take effect. And the Gemara will soon bring the source of this concept that a Kidushin, that you can't then have a relation with the wife, then the Kidushin doesn't take effect in the first place. So the Gemara answers, true, Rava could have given this explanation, but L'dvarav the Rami bar Chama ka'amar. Rava was responding to the reason that Rami bar Chama brought, because we learned before in the Gemara, on Daf Nun Amud Beis, the Gemara explained that Rami bar Chama had brought a pasuk v'isha el achaisa le'sikach litzrei, that it's based on the pasuk that you can't be mekadesh two sisters. And Rami bar Chama wanted to say that the pasuk is talking about the case of a mishnah when you're being mekadesh two sisters together. On that, Rava asked and explained that no, the pasuk can't be talking about that. But he explained, Rami bar Chama, the pasuk is talking about being mekadesh first one sister and then afterwards another sister, and it doesn't take effect. And then, based on Rabbi's rule, we could say that so too, if you mekadesh both together, it won't work. So, since he was explaining based on the reason of Rami bar Chama, he explained that if you bring in Rabbi's rule, then you'll understand how we could see from this pasuk that the Kidushin will not take effect. But really, you don't really need that pasuk altogether. We could just simply say that because we don't know which one of these two women, of the sisters, the Kidushin is for, so it's the Kidushin that's not Mesurim L'Biyah, and therefore there's no Kidushin here. So here, the Gemara is going to bring the machlokes about this subject and a long discussion about this halacha. Itme, so we learned the machlokes, Kidushin Shei Mesurim L'Biyah, you mekadesh Isha, and it's a Kidushin that then the husband can't have a relation with the wife. So the machlokes about this is Abaye Amar have a Kidushin. Abaye says the Kidushin takes effect. Rava Amar lo have a Kidushin. Rava says, as we mentioned before, Rava's opinion that the Kidushin does not take effect. Amar Rava said, Bar Ahina asbarali. Bar Ahina explained to me the source for this, that there has to be a Kidushin that it can be bia afterwards, because the pasuk says by Kidushin ki yikach ish isha ubaala. So what does this mean? Ki yikach ish isha is the Kidushin with kesef, as we learned in the beginning of the Masechta. Ki yikach is kicha, referring to the Kidushin, and then afterwards it adds ubaala, which means Kidushin are Mesurim L'Biyah of a Kidushin, only if you can be bayil, or if you can have a relation with her, it's Kidushin. Kidushin she'ein Mesurim L'Biyah, but if it's impossible to have biyah afterwards, lo yav a Kidushin, it will not be Kidushin. Okay, so this is the machlokes of Abaye and Rava. So the Gemara begins first with our Mishnah. How do their opinions fit with what it says in our Mishnah? Tanan, it said in the Mishnah, HaMekadesh Isha Bita. Person is Mekadesh, a wife, a mother that is, and a daughter. Isha v'achaisa, a woman and her sister. Ka'achas, together at the same time. Einem u'kedoshes. The Kedushin does not take effect for either one of them. Now, what do you see from this? Can't you be medayik as follows? The Mishnah is saying that he was Mekadesh both of them, so the Kedushin does not take effect. Ha achas me Isha Bita. But if he says there's a mother and a daughter here, and he says I'm being Mekadesh one of you, and he doesn't say which one, Oy me Isha v'achaisa, or he's being Mekadesh one of them from the woman and a sister, Mekudeshes, the Kedushin does take effect, even though we don't know which one he was Mekadesh. So it's a Kedushin that you can't have any biyah. V'amai Kedushin Shei Mesurim L'Biyah ninu. This is a Kedushin where he didn't say clearly which one of these two is being Mekadesh, so it's not impossible to have a relation. So how could there be a Kedushin here? To Yufta the Rava, doesn't what our Mishnah says here refute what Rava said, that Kedushin that's not possible for there to be biyah, that it's not a Kedushin. Amalach Rava, so Rava will answer you. Before Rava comes to answer how he learns the Reisha of the Mishnah, Rava says, let's take a look at what it says in the Seif of the Mishnah. Well, the time, according to your reasoning, the way you understood the Reisha, let's see if that fits with what it says afterwards. The Mishnah then says as follows: Ma'aseh b'chomish noshim. There was a story with 5 women. Ubehen, amongst these 5 women were shtei achayis. 2 of them were sisters. V'likeit echad kal kol shalteinim. Person took a basket of figs. V'shalahen isa was theirs. V'shal shvius isa was from Shemitah. V'amar, and he gave them this basket of figs to be mekadesh them, and he said that a kulchem mukudoshes li b'kalkalazu. All of you are married to me with this basket of figs. V'amru chachamim. The Mishnah says, the Chachamim said, Ein achayis mekudashes. The sisters, the 2 of them, are not going to be mekudashes. Just the sisters. That's what the Mishnah said. Okay, so the Gemara is now medayek, or this is Rava asking here. So what does it say? That the two of them, the sisters, so the Kidushin will not take effect. But the other three women here, of the five, so they're not sisters, mukadashis, the Kidushin does take effect. Now, so the Gemara wants to understand, what is the case here? What exactly did the person tell them? Hey, Chidami, what are we talking about? If it is like it says in the Mishnah, the Omar Kolchem, that I'm being Mekadesh all of you with this basket of figs, and 2 out of the 5 cannot be Mukadeshes, and the other 3 can. So why should this take effect even for the other 3? Kni at v'chamayru. This is similar to a person that is giving something to someone as a gift, or he's selling him, and he's telling him, telling this person, I'm selling it to you and to the donkey. Obviously, the donkey can't acquire. So he's basically saying that you could acquire it together with the donkey, just like the donkey can. So if the donkey can't acquire it, so then this person can't acquire it either. So there's no kinyan here. So again, it's like kni at v'chamayr. Who the at v'chamayr like kana, and the halach is that in such a case where a person says that this person and the chamayr, the donkey, should be kaina, none of them are kaina. So what the Gemara is saying is, over here, it's the same thing. If he's being Mekadesh 5 women, and 2 out of them, the Kidushin cannot take effect because they're sisters, so if the Kidushin can't take effect for those 2, it can't take effect for the other 3, because he's saying it all together, Kulchem. That only if the Kidushin can take effect for all of you, you'll be Mukadeshes. So how can the Mishnah say that for 2 of them, it's not a Kidushin, but for the other 3, it is a Kidushin? So Elo, says Rava, what must be the case here in the Sefer of the Mishnah? Lav, don't you think the case here is the Amalu Achas Mikem? That it's a case in the Mishnah here where he said, 1 of the 5 of you should be Mukadeshes. The Ketani, and what does the Mishnah say? Ein achayis Mukadashais, that the Kidushin does not take effect for the sisters. Now, why doesn't the Kidushin take effect for the sisters? So the reason is because it's a Kedushin which is not Mesur and Lebiyah. He said Achas Mikem, and we don't know which one he meant, so therefore he can't have Biyah, so there's no Kedushin. So over here in the Sefer, you see, like what Rava said. So the Gemara says, if so, it comes out, L'Rava Kashi Reisha. For Rava, there's a question from the Reisha, as the Gemara was Medayik from the Reisha, that you see that if he was Mekadesh 1 of these sisters, then the Kedushin would take effect. And La Abaye Kashi Sefer, and according to Abaye, as Rava just explained, how you must learn the Sefer, and it comes out to be a question on Abaye, it's mashma from the Sefer, the Kedushin that's not Mesur and Lebiyah, the Kedushin will not take effect. So the Gemara now explains how this Mishnah could be understood according to both opinions. Abaye metaras l'tamei and Rava metaras l'tamei. Each one explains the Mishnah according to his reasoning, according to his opinion. And the Gemara here will explain how you have to read the Mishnah, and is sort of missing something here in the Mishnah, like the Gemara says in other places, chsure mechsere, and you have to read the Mishnah as follows according to each opinion. So first the Gemara says, Abaye metaras l'tamei. Abaye explains as follows. Hamakadesh isha ubita. Or isha v'chaisa, a person's mekadesh, a woman and a daughter, or 2 sisters, ka'achas, together. Einan mukadoshes, the kedushin will not take effect. Ho achas meisha ubita, meisha v'chaisa. But if a person is mekadesh and he says, I'm being mekadesh 1 of these 2, one of them, not one out of the mother and the daughter, or out of these sisters, mukadeshes, then kedushin will take effect. This is following along with Abaye's opinion that kedushin that's not mesur and lebiyah, the kedushin could take effect. Now you have to add here into the Mishnah the following thing that they didn't say clearly in our Mishnah. You have to add in that if the person clearly said haru'uya lebiyah tiskadishli, that the one that's fit for biyah, that's the one should be mukadeshes to me, eina mukadeshes. So then she will not be mukadeshes because we don't know which one. So therefore there's no Kidushin. But that's only if the person said clearly, haru'uya lebiyah tiskadishli, the one that's fit to have biyah with me. And on that, the Mishnah adds, Umaysanami b'chomish noshim. And this is also the story of the 5 women, ubehen shtei achayis, and amongst them there's 2 sisters. V'liket echad kalkala shalteinim, and a person took a basket of figs, v'amar, and he said, over here, just like this last case that the Mishnah added, the Gemara just added into the Mishnah, and the person said, Haru'uya li mikem tiskadishli, that the one amongst you that's roi for me should be mukadeshes, and he didn't specify which one. V'amru chachamim ein achayis mukadashais, that the sisters cannot be mukadashais. Right? The other ones, which are roi for biyah, could be mukadashais, but the sisters amongst them cannot be mukadeshes to him. So that's the explanation of the Mishnah according to Abaye's opinion that comes out that we say Kidushin that's not Mesur Lebiyah, the Kidushin will take effect. It's only when the person said Hara'uya Lebiyah Tiskadesh Li, so then Eina Mukadeshes. And then the story also is on that case. Rav Mitaretz L'Tamei, on the other hand, Rav answers and explains. Hamakadesh Achas Misha Ubita. You have to understand the Mishnah. When the Mishnah said that he was Makadesh both, the mother and the daughter, what the Mishnah really meant is, the person came and he was Makadesh, he says, I'm being Makadesh one out of you. One amongst the mother and the daughter. Oy Achas Mi'isha V'Achaisa. One of these sisters. And that's Nasa Kemish Kiddush Isha Ubita. It's considered as if it was Mekadesh both the mother and the daughter. Or Yishav HaChaisas, Mekadesh the sisters, Ka'achas together. Ve'ena Mekadashis, and they're not Mekadeshes. So when the Mishnah says he was Mekadesh both of them, what the Mishnah meant to say is, even if he was Mekadesh, and he says one out of the two of them, it's as if he was Mekadesh both of them together, and the Kidushin doesn't take effect. One out of them also will not take effect, because it's not a Kidushin which is possible for Biyah. And on that, the Mishnah brings a Maisanami B'cham Mishnoshim, that the story of the 5 women, Uben Shtei Achayis, and there's 2 sisters amongst them, V'liket Achas, Echad, Kalkala Shaltainim, V'omar, and he took his basket of figs and he gave it to them, and he said, and here again the Gemara adds in something according to Rav's Pshat, Hare Kulchem, he said, all of you, or he said, Ve'achas Mishtei Achayis, and then he said, and only one of the 2 sisters, Mukadashesli, will be Mukadashes to me. The Kalkalazu with this basket. That from the sisters, they're not going to be Mukadashais. Why? Because since he said one of the sisters, and we don't know which one, so as far as the sisters are concerned, it's a Kedushin that's not Mesur Lebiyah. But the other women, he said that they are Mukadeshes, they all will be Mukadeshes. So that's, again, this story actually is making the point and proving what Rava is saying, that the Kedushin that's not Mesur Lebiyah is not Mukadeshes. So Rashi over here adds and explains in the Gemara that even though it comes out that the sisters are not Mukadeshes, and the Gemara's question before was that Kni At V'Chamayr, so then the sale does not take effect at all. So over here, if the sisters are not Mukadeshes, how could the Kedushin take effect for the others? So Rashi answers, this is not the same like the Gemara thought before. Before we thought that the person just said one word, Kolchem. So since the Kedushin can't take effect for the sisters, so it can't take effect for anyone else. But over here, the Gemara is adding that he said Kolchem, but he also said Va'achas Mishtei Achayis. So really, one of the sisters could be Mukadeshes. The problem why it's not a Kiddushin is because we don't know which one, so technically it comes out to be an issue of Ein Mesur Lebiyah. But really, if we would know which one it was, he could be Mekadesh, one of the sisters, together with another 3 women. So therefore, this is not like Kniyat V'Chamayr, and therefore the Kiddushin will take effect. For the other ones, not for the sisters, but for the other 3 women, it will take effect. The Gemara continues, Tashema, to bring a raya here to this question about Kedushin she'ein Mesur Lebiyah. HaMekadesh is bitay stam. So Mishnah here later, further in the Masechta, a person is Mekadesh, one of his daughters. And he has daughters that are still in his possession, Ketanois. Ketanois are in the father's possession to be Mekadesh them. And he has daughters that are already a Boigeres or Boigreis, it sounds like more than one, and they're above the age of 12 and a half, and he can't be Mekadesh them. So he was Mekadesh a daughter stam. So the Mishnah there says, Ein ha-boigreis b'chlal. The boigreis that are out of his possession are not in this suffix that maybe he meant to be Mekadesh them. He can't be Mekadesh them. But the ketanois, if he has the ketanois, so the Gemara here says, ha ketanois b'chlal. But from this we understand that if he has younger daughters that are in his possession, they are included in this Kedushin, and there will be a suffix over here, which one of them is Mekadeshes. But why should there be any Kedushin here at all? Kidushin she'ein Mesur Lebiyah ninu. This is a Kedushin which there's no Biyah possible because you don't know which daughter you meant to be Mekadesh. This refutes what Rava said. Answers the Gemara. Hamalach Rava will explain. What are we talking about over here? Kishe'ein sham ela gedayla katana. When this man only has one daughter which is a Gedayla, a Begeres, out of his possession, and one daughter which is a Katana. So therefore the Mishnah is saying that the Begeres, when he's Mekadesh and he didn't specify which daughter, so the Begeres is not in the Kedushin, and the Katana is the one that is Mekadesh. That's the only one that he could be Mekadesh. So it's Mesur Lebiyah, that one Katana. Fragt the Gemara, but how could you say this? In the Lashon of the Mishnah, the diak over here was ha-boigreis Katani. It says a plural term, boigreis, that the boigreis are not included. And from that we understand that just like it's saying regarding boigreis, it's more than one, so too regarding the ketana, it's not one ketana, it's ketanais, similar to baigrais. So he does have more, it sounds like he has more than one daughter, that's ketanais, and still the Mishnah is saying that they are included in this Kidushin. So the Gemara answers, you can't be medayik from this plural term of baigrais. My baigrais the alma. It's not talking about this one person. It's saying regarding this halacha that at any time you have such a situation, any person that would have that older daughter and a younger daughter, then the halacha is that only the katana which is in his possession will be mukadeshes. It's using the plural term because it's saying that this is the halacha for any person that has an older daughter. But b'payil here, this one person now has just one baigeres and one katana, and therefore it is a Kidushin hamasurim lebiyah. But the Gemara has another question on this pshat of that Mishnah. How could he say this? So what's the chiddush here? Person's mekadosh one of his daughters. He doesn't specify. Obviously, the Kidushin is only for the one that it's in his possession, that it's possible for him to be mekadosh, not for the begeres. Answers the Gemara, Hacha b'mayaskinon the shavise shliach. Over here, what happened is his daughter, the one that's a begeres, appointed the father to be her shliach, to be mekadesher. So now there could be a suffix. Which one did he mean to be mekadesh? Mao the time I would think to say ki mekabel kidushi, when he receives kedushin for one of his daughters. Maybe he did receive the kedushin for the begeres, which is out of his possession, but she appointed the father to be a shliach. Kamash Malon. That's what the Mishnah is saying. That no, if he didn't specify, then we know the leishavik inish midi disle anomine, that a father will not leave to be mekadesh someone, his older daughter, that he has no anah from this because he doesn't get to keep the kesef kiddushin. He's just a shliach for his daughter, and she gets the kesef kiddushin. And if he'll be mekadesh his daughter the ketana, then that kesef kiddushin the father keeps. So therefore, if he said he accepted the kesef kiddushin for one of them, it's for the ketana, since this is something the father has anah from it. But you're saying that the older, the begeres, she appointed the father to be her shliach. In the Mishnah here, it doesn't specify, so shouldn't we say that it's also talking about when the older daughter appointed the father a shliach and he said, you can keep the kes of Kidushin. So in such a case, how are we so sure that the father is interested in the Kidushin of the Ketana and not in the one of the begeres, that she appointed him and he can keep the kes of Kidushin? Answers the Gemara, it's still not, the father would rather still be Mekadosh the Ketana. Moment. So the Gemara answers, nevertheless, inish mitzvah a person will not leave a mitzvah that it applies upon him. This is a mitzvah a father has to marry off his daughter when she's a katana, as Rashi brings. It says, this is a mitzvah regarding a katana. And and to do a mitzvah to marry off the daughter of begeres, which is in her own possession, and the father doesn't have that mitzvah. So therefore, we assume that the father was mekadesh the ketana for the mitzvah. So the Gemara Toshima brings that ayah from another Mishnah in Masechta Yevamis. Or actually, this is the Summa the Gemara is going to bring from Masechta Yevamis. This is here also, further in the Masechta. It's in that same Mishnah that the Gemara just quoted. It says over there as follows: a person has two sets of daughters, two groups of daughters. Mishtei nashim, from two wives. Let's say the younger wife has two daughters and the older wife has two daughters. And the person comes and says, Kidashti as biti agedayla. I accepted Kidushin from a man. I was mekadosh one of my daughters. Which one? The gedayla, the oldest one, or the old one, gedayla. Now, ve'eni yedeya, and then he says, I don't know im gedayla shabi gedaylas. What did I have in mind? Who was I thinking about when I accepted it for the gedayla? And I told this man, you can marry one of my older daughter. Which gedayla did I mean? Gedayla shabi gedaylas. The older one from the older group, from the wife that has the older daughters, and there are two over there, maybe even more than two, but there are two. And did he mean the very oldest one? Or vim gedayla shebiktanais, did he mean from the other set of daughters, from another wife that are younger? And he meant the older one from those daughters? Im ketana shebikdaylas, or maybe he meant the younger one from the older group, she gedayla and agdayla shebiktanis, because she's older than the older one of the younger group. So it's not clear what the person says, any dad, he doesn't know what he was thinking. Which one he promised this person that he can marry. Kulon asurais chutz miktana shebiktane. So all of them will be asur. There's a self Kidushin for each one of them, besides the ketana shebiktane, the youngest of the younger group, so that we know for sure is not included in Gedayla. Divrei Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's opinion. So what do we see over here? There's a suffix of Kidushin, and the Mishnah says that we say that in such a case, even though it's not Mesur and Labiyah, it's impossible for there to be any Biyah here, but nevertheless, the Kidushin takes effect. Or there's a suffix at least. So according to Rava, there should be no suffix over here. If it's not Mesur and Labiyah, there should be no Kidushin. And says the Gemara, what is it talking about? Kishohokru. That really this person knew exactly in the beginning who he had in mind, and he was Makabel Kedushin for one of his daughters. And then later on, it got mixed up. He forgot. He forgot exactly which one it was. So only later, there was a moment, there was a time for the Kedushin to take effect. It was Mesur and Labiyah. But later on, he forgot. And now he says, I don't know. The Kanami, the Raya, from the Lashon that the Mishnah says, the Ketani Eini Yoideya. The person comes forward now and says, I don't know. V'loi Ketani Ein Yedua. It doesn't say that it was never known, that the person was Mekadesh and he never knew. He knew and then he forgot. So therefore the Kedushin takes effect. It's Mesur and Labiyah. Shma Mino. So that's a clear Raya from the Lashon of the Mishnah. What's Bechlal the Chiddush over here in this Mishnah, in such a case where he says Gedolah and he forgot that we should say that it could be either one of these that can be defined as a Gedolah besides a Katanish or Katanis. What's the Chiddush of Rav Meir here? Says the Gemara, La Fukim de Rabbi Yosi. What Rav Meir is saying is excluding from Rabbi Yosi's opinion. Okay, what did Rabbi Yosi say? The Omar, Rabbi Yosi said here, if you look there in the Mishnah, you'll see Rabbi Yosi argues, and Rabbi Yosi says that in such a case that we say that the Kedushin is only for the very oldest one. Because the Amar le'meichis inish nafshe l'sveike. A person does not put himself into a suffix. If a person is Mekadesh and he says he's being Mekadesh a Gedolah, so then he meant the oldest one, the very oldest one. Because the very oldest one, there could be no sveikis about this. This is the oldest one, and she's the one that's Mekadeshes. Any of the other ones, so there could be a suffix. It could end up being a suffix. So therefore, the Kedushin will be Dafka for the oldest one. That's what Rabbi Yosi says. So on the Kamash Malon, this is the Chiddush that Rabbi Meir was saying. The Machas Inish Nafshel is fake. That no, when a person was Mekadesh, could be as Mekadesh one of the other ones, and even though it could turn out later to be a suffix, but nevertheless, there's going to be a suffix about this now that he doesn't know, that he doesn't remember, and therefore the Kiddushin will take effect, or there'll be a suffix of Kiddushin for all of them, but not for the Ketanish or Beketanis. That was the Chiddush of Rav Meir. Okay, so this is the Pshat here according to Rava. Right, so according to Abaye, the Chiddush of Rav Meir actually would be Abaye's din, that even though it's Kiddushin that's not Mesur and Labiyah, nevertheless we'll chayshish for all of them. According to Rava, the Chiddush of Rav Meir's din is that we say that when a person is Mekadesh, he may have meant one of them because a person does something in a way that it could end up being a suffix. He's not concerned about that, and he could have done it in such a way that it would end up being a suffix. And Rabbi Yosi says, no, if a person does something, we could assume that his das was to do it in Eifin, that later there should be no sveikis about it, so he definitely meant the very oldest one. Talk to Gemara Tashema, here Mishnah from Yuvam is Misha Kiddush Achas Mishtei Achayis, a person's Mekadesh one or two sisters, Ve'eni Yedeya Eza Kiddush, and he doesn't remember which one of the two he was Mekadesh. So Neisen get Lazu, Veget Lazu, he has to give a get for each one of them. So Safi Kiddushin for each one of them. So here again, another case where you see that it's sisters, and it's Kiddushin Sha'im Mesur and Labiyah, and nevertheless we say that he has to give a get for both of them. So it's Saraya that it's Mekadeshes. And says the Gemara, what is that Mishnah they're speaking about? Similar to the answer before, that originally he knew which sister was Mekadesh, but then later he forgot. So therefore, now he can't live with them, but in the beginning he was able to, so the Kidushin took effect. The Ekanami, we see it in that Mishnah as well, the Ketani Eino Yedeya, that now he doesn't know. V'lei Ketani Eino Yedua, it doesn't say that he never knew. What's the Chiddush of that Mishnah? That if he has a suffix, which one is Mekadesh, then obviously there'll be a suffix and he has to get a get for both of them. If the Chiddush is not the point of Kedushin She'ein and Mesur and Labiyah that it takes effect, so what is the Chiddush here? And so the Gemara says, in this ratio, there's no Chiddush. The Chiddush is for the continuation of what it says in the Sefer. Mishnah there says, now if this man dies without any children, obviously, V'loi och echad, and he has one brother just. So now this one brother, Chaylitz l'shteyen, has to do Chalitze for both of them. He's not going to be able to do Yibum for both of them because he doesn't know which one is the wife. And if one is the wife and the other one is not, so then there's a Isser of Achais chalutza, chachamim were actually geyser that you can't marry a sister of a chalutza. So, which you don't know which one is going to be a sister from a chalutza. So therefore you have to do chalitza for both of them. Okay, that's if there's one brother. But this man passed away and he has two brothers. So now echad chalitz ve'echad miyavim. You can do chalitza for one of them. And then the other one, because that he has to chalitza because it's possible that she's chayiv in chalitza or the yibum, so he has to chalitza. But then once he does chalitza for one of them, now another brother, echad miyavim, could go and do yibum. And Mamanavshach, it's not an issue. Either he's actually fulfilling the mitzvah of yibum, because this was the one that was really the wife. And if not, so then there's no issue of another brother marrying a sister of a chalutza. That marrying a sister of a chalutza is a gzeira of Chazal, and that's only the same brother. But a different brother can go and marry her. She's tam a wife that he's marrying. Now, im kadmu v'konsu, if both of these brothers went and they were both went and married or miyavim, both of these sisters, we're not going to take them out, we're not going to force them to divorce them, because the Isser over here is only Achois Chalutza, which is Isser Midrabanan. But the Yeved, if both brothers went and married, so then we're not going to force them to divorce them. So now the Gemara explains what the Chiddush over here in the Sefer is, that when it says regarding the two brothers, Dafke Mechlatz V'Hadu Yevumi, that when it says over here that one could do Chalitza for one sister and the other one Yibum, that's only if there was first Chalitza, and then afterwards the next brother could do Yibum. Avol Yevumi V'Hadu Mechlatz Loi. But if one does Yibum first, and then the other one would do Chalitza later, so that is not allowed to do, because the Kapaga Ba'Chayziku Kasai. It's possible that when the first brother is doing Yibum, so this is a sister of the one that's really zakuk to him. Maybe this sister here is not the one that's really chayiv Yibum. Maybe the sister is the real zakuka. She's the one that's really connected to them and is chayiv in the mitzvah and Yibum. And just like there's an issa to marry a sister of a wife, chaysishtoi, so too there's an issa to marry a chays zakuka. So you can't go ahead and do Yibum first when it's possible that now this woman here is a sister to the one that's really the one that you have the mitzvah of Yibum, a chays zakukasai. That's the Chiddush of the Sefer, and therefore it's not a Shaila and Rabbah. Okay, the Gemara is going to continue here. The Siyam of the Sugi, we'll see him at Hashem tomorrow.